Okay. Welcome everybody. I'll just get my act together here. Yeah, welcome to the Cotham Ward session. My name is Alex Currell. I'll be the facilitator for tonight. Miff Parker will be the co-facilitator. She'll be helping manage all the questions that will be coming from you to our candidate. As you probably know, there are two candidates standing in Cotham. We have here, and welcome, Liz Kelly. Great to see you here, Liz.
Thanks for having me.
Regrettably, the second candidate, the sitting councillor, Felicity Sinfield, didn't respond to multiple invitations to come along tonight, which was, very disappointing, as Lynn was saying. Again, as Lynn was saying, the purpose of the forum is for candidates to introduce themselves to voters and to respond to their questions. Hopefully we'll get to know what Liz stands for and be able to cast a more informed vote. The main focus of the forum is obviously action on the climate, but any of you who've seen our scorecard will know that we've also been highlighting council accountability and transparency. And as far as tonight's session goes, it's fine for you to ask questions on any topic, and we'll certainly try and accommodate them if we have time. And given we've only got one candidate here and not too many people in the group, I think we should have plenty of time for questions. You'll be on mute throughout the session to ensure that it flows smoothly. And so please enter your questions into the chat. Hopefully you all know how to do that. It's pretty simple. Just click on the chat icon along the bottom of your Zoom screen. Miff will be monitoring them and she will ask those questions on your behalf. Questions on similar topics may be combined just for efficiency and simplicity. We've got a very simple agenda for the session. We'll start with a talk from Liz, who has 5 minutes or so to introduce herself. As part of that introduction, we've asked all the candidates to ask 3 questions, which were provided to them in advance. Miff will put those questions in the chat, so you'll be able to see those while Liz is speaking. After Liz is finished, Miff will put your chat questions to her, and in theory, at least, she'll have a minute to answer those questions, but I think we can be a little bit flexible. We'll conclude when we run out of questions or when we hit 9 p.m, whichever comes first. So with that little introduction, over to you, Liz.
Great. Well, thank you. And thank you for having me. Thanks, Alex and Miff, for your work on this. Miff with the head torch, I'm loving it. You're out in the environment, you must say. Just a bit about me. I am the youngest of 7 children. I grew up in a small country town in New South Wales. My village school was 12 students, and it was here that I learnt how important community is. My parents were involved in all things community, including ferrying kids around for sport or supporting those who needed support within the community. Like, for example, helping the elderly. My mum and dad both volunteered doing Meals on Wheels, working with CWA, in the local op shop, and on the committees of various sporting and other clubs. My mother helped set up an aged care facility in our local community and volunteered there until she was 70 years old. My mother went by the adage, it takes a village to raise a child, and I guess that's where I get my passion for supporting people within the community. In saying that, I grew up, and as I said, in a small village, grew up on tank water and a canned toilet, so understood the concept of having to save resources wherever we could. It's just a natural thing when you grow up in in the country that the environment actually really impacts on you every day, from growing your food to other things. So I went off to university and studied business and then travelled. Travelling is one of my passions. I travelled extensively around Australia and internationally. I met my husband Stephen whilst travelling, and we still love travelling. It's one of our favourite things to do. After we settled in Melbourne, we ended up in Boroondara, and that was by accident, but it stayed intentionally. It was because of my country roots and the love of green spaces and the environment that led us here. The Birrarung and the way it weaves its way through the city is one of my greatest loves. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional people who still care for that, and the community here that I think also really care for our environment in Boroondara. It was really my saviour during the COVID years, and I think a lot of people within this area spent a lot of time around that Birrarung, and it was such a beautiful space to be. My children grew up in this community. They both went to QE's primaries. Claire went to Q High, and Connor, who has a disability, went to St Paul's. Connor can be often seen around our community and enjoying our green spaces. I call myself on my fly, if anyone's seen it. I'm a fairly average runner, lover of live music, and one of the things I do love of this area is its access to the city and the transport that comes along with that, accessible transport into the city. Obviously, we're blessed with our green spaces and the sheer beauty of the location. And I'm committed to protecting our beautiful environment for all to access well into the future. Our high streets are a really important part and a vibrant part of our community. And I think it's really important that we support in our community our traders, as this is the economic heart of our community. That's why I'm standing for council, really, is because I'm not an expert on environment, and I'm not going to pretend I am. My passion is people, but with that comes the importance of the environment and what that actually gives to people's health and well-being. I would look to experts within the community who are experts on environmental and community activists in that area to hear what they have to say around our community. I think I'm an authentic person in that. One of my best friends, I guess, in saying that I'm not an environmental expert, but I've spent, the best part of 40 years with an absolute gun when it comes to permaculture and sustainable practices, and he lives his life that way constantly. And I'm always astounded by the new things that he comes up with around ensuring that our environment is not trashed, if you like, and we live sustainably and beyond within our means. So in saying that, one of the questions, that's a bit about me, why I'm running for council, is because I think we do need a change. We need progressive voice. We need people to listen. I had a look, I just want to repeat to you, I don't know whether you know that the vision, the Boroondara Council's vision is a sustainable and inclusive community. The purpose is we work together to deliver the community priorities and place our customers at the centre of everything we do. And the values is collaborative, consumer-centric culture. I think, and I don't want to have a go at the current incumbent, but I am, not being here shows a disregard for that vision, purpose and values. So I do think having said this is a significant community group within Boroondara, lighter footprints. you have a lot to offer our community. You do a lot of hard work in our community. Setting up this forum is an amazing feat, and I really thank you for that work. So one of the questions for me that I'm going to answer is, why do I think councillors should play a more significant leadership role in the community when it comes to climate change? And if so, what should that entail? I absolutely, yes, they should take a leadership role. Part of being a councillor to me is actually listening to our community, all parts of the community, but also facilitating what you understand around climate and climate change, working with other key stakeholders as well, other parts of government, other councils, other networks of groups, because much of our community, we border on other, for example, the Gardeners or the Cooruncut Creek network. All those things run through our community, but also other communities and councils, and we should be able to work together with those. And I think councillors should take the lead on those types of things. I think there is, there's a community action plan, and it's a good plan. It looks like there's some quite good things within that plan. But how are we as councillors, if I'm elected, how are we accountable to that plan? How do we review it, and how do we actually ensure that what we are asking, are they achievable? You can make some sort of very broad targets, but are they achievable targets? And if not, how do we get to improve targets with what we currently have? I think as well, when we think about the QREC Centre, the fact that it's going to be fueled by gas shows a lack of commitment to reducing our carbon emissions. So I do think that that's important, that we take the lead on those things. The other question was, what new initiative would we propose to include in the council's next climate action plan to help Boroondara residents reduce their carbon? One thing that's really important is what's in everyone's all staffs, etc., in their position descriptions as their KPIs. Is climate included in that? When we negotiate, is climate targets, included in those things? When we look at any of our contracts in council, do we include a target on climate and emissions reductions? Are we to ensure all our buildings are fueled by sorry, I just got distracted by a question because I'm easily distracted. Should our, all our council buildings be fueled by renewable energies? I mean, I think some of them are, but I don't know how QREC aligns, if it's got gas. Also, what else do I think we should do? Any other initiatives? I mean, I guess one of the things is, how do we look at our transport strategy within our local area? I mean, I know we've got a bike strategy, and I know that for some people that's not. I've spoken to people in this ward that aren't so happy around some of the bike paths going through certain green spaces or sporting fields. I think the other thing that's sort of been very clear when I've spoken to residents in this area has been around sporting precincts and green spaces that have, aligned to sporting fields, having increased hours of sport being played. So then you've got these blazing lights, which isn't good for biodiversity. And I actually spoke to someone who spoke about within each kind of green space is, and I know there's this broader action group, but are there, you know, that in green spaces where there's sporting precincts, are there stakeholder groups that represent the sporting clubs as well as the residents that live in the area? So that's one thing that I think, because there is an environmental impact of those things. The solar program, sorry.
I was going to say, if you've got more suggestions for things you would like to do on climate.
Yeah. So I think, I do think, a community battery. I was at volunteered at Electrify Boroondara, and it was fantastic seeing that initiative. But I do think, what do we do around community batteries and those things? Again, as I said, I'm not an expert in this area, but I'd be willing to listen to the experts. And I know there are candidates who I hope get elected who have more experience in this particular area than what I do. And I would be happy to facilitate and listen to stakeholders. So, and the last thing was, I think community engagement, well, it just talks about, I think that's one of my key things that I do well, is listen, hear, attend, obviously discuss, negotiate. All those things are something that I feel I have a strength in. I've worked on boards, I've worked in governance for over 20 or 30 years. My expertise, as I said, is more in services and social services and disability. In that sense, I've worked with a range of different people, and some of that has been around access to environment and those types of things. So that's really it for me.
Oh, thank you very much, Liz, for answering those questions. And answering them very well. We are starting to get a few questions in the chat now.
Yep.
And I'll read them out. Are you seeing them as well? I gather you are.
Just one popped up before, and I'm like, I kind of go, well, there's something,
Well, I'll read them out anyway. Yeah. So first off, we have, hi Liz Kelly, should the Q Rec Centre be built with gas-fired water heating while encouraging residents to get off expensive and polluting gas? Thank you. That's from Tim Warmington.
No, I don't think it should be. I have had this discussion a bit with some people around how we manage to transition to other energy sources whilst we export gas out of Victoria to other areas. And I do wonder how, and I've spoken this with a few of my colleagues around what that looks like. But surely in Boroondara we could look at something other than gas for our recreation centre. I'd be any other suggestions, Tim, on what would be a better solution? This is where I want to hear.
I think all our participants are muted, so
they're not allowed to answer the questions. Yeah, my questions.
You're the one answering questions, Liz.
Yeah, no, they can't answer. I'm the one answering questions. But I think, as I said, I'm not an expert on climate, and I would say that I just don't think it's a good idea when it comes to and I totally agree what Tim's saying. If we're telling other people they should get off gas, why would you use gas in a huge there you go, electrify via solar and wind? So yeah, why would you use gas in? A council should, if they're going to take the lead, they really should be taking the lead. I guess my question has always, I have this dilemma around how do people who, and I know if you use renewable energies, it saves people money. I often wonder about the people who don't kind of get access to that information and knowledge. How do we keep them with the power that they need? So but yeah, I mean, obviously I believe council or anything council building should be fueled by renewable energies, not finite. Yeah, not gas emission.
Yeah.
Well, yes, thank you. It would be astronomical. That's correct.
Yeah.
Gas is incredible. Yeah, it's just
Difficulty is persuading those making the decisions.
absolutely.
I'll just read out.
I guess that's the thing. How far are we into that project, and at what point do we, those that are elected, say, let's it's been off. How long would it take if as far as the project goes? And I could ask someone around that, like if you already committed to gas, then what would it, have you got the infrastructure in place, or can that be removed and put into solar for not, other types of energy?
Yeah, there are obviously some complexities.
Yes, but I mean, I think that'd be the first question you'd ask, wouldn't you? I mean, around that project, any sort of project from the council should include those criteria and KPIs.
Yeah, absolutely. First off.
Yeah.
I'll just read the next question, which is from Rosemary Nielsen. I'm concerned about the loss of trees, particularly mature trees. It seems that the developers remove all the trees on a block prior to building. Each day another house disappears and all the trees are bulldozed too. I complained about a paper bark being removed from the nature strip to facilitate the builder's access, but I was told the arborist made the decision. What is your view in regard to protecting the green in the spaces, and how can this be accomplished so that we also keep the habitats for wildlife, including birds?
Thanks, Rosemary. I know there's a significant tree register, and I know there's a tree register. I think before any planning gets approved, and it should, I would assume that this is part of planning process. I think one of the things maybe is you need to look at increasing fines, because I think some developers just go, well, we'll just cop that fine because we're, really in our budget, it's so big. Our budget's so big, so it's so insignificant in our budget. So I think that one way, is the stick. I think there's the chicken and the egg. No, there's the carrot, I guess, is around encouraging. I mean, as I said, the reason I live in this area is because of the green spaces, the beautiful trees, the shade and the canopy that brings to reduce heat maps within our community. So I'm just not sure. I mean, I walked around my area and I actually saw quite a number of empty blocks. But the good thing I noticed was there was a number of trees had sort of been kept. But that was probably, that's one thing I was looking. Oh, there's an empty block. Are there trees there? Yes, there are. But then, are there a heap of trees? But there were some good, still old trees. So I think it's a really. And also, I mean, I guess is our tree. Do we need to relook at our tree register? The council tree register, the significant, and do we need to expand that? Do we need to work with what the state government does around that tree register as well? I think that there's. I mean, I absolutely agree that we shouldn't be knocking down trees. I just think they are so important to our environment, and shade for housing, all those things are such that then decreases your bills around having air conditioning if you've got good shade and a well-built house that's facing the right direction with the right materials. So all those things are, I think, really important.
Thank you very much for answering that question. Then we have Rosemary again, just mentioning the hugeness of the gas bill and how large it's going to be for if you're heating, the swimming pool.
Oh, it'd be massive. Yeah, I mean, I tend to, and gas is completely, and when we're talking about the cost of living, I mean, it really is a significant impact, and encouraging people with more solar and renewable energies to fuel their houses. I think there's more to be done when you talk about leadership, about education and awareness for that, particularly in when it comes to economics and cost of living for people. I think there's a real benefit to that. And what's interesting, because sometimes I quite regularly catch Ubers, and it's really interesting now seeing people, Uber drivers with electric vehicles. I've not seen that as much previously, and just recently, and they just said how much it saves them. So it's really, it's an interesting one. Yeah.
Now we have a question here from Robert Hutchings and Sue Norman related to road maintenance and other things. How would you ensure the council has the necessary expertise to manage the key responsibilities of road maintenance, major project management, contract formation, long-term planning, deep and respectful community consultation prior to making decisions? I'm concerned about the council's current lack of expertise. For example, the Kew recreation disaster. So we need expertise.
Yeah. As a councillor, I mean, the key is it starts from the top, doesn't it? So in my mind, councillors, as I said, I've been on many boards, and the councillors are the people who represent the strategic vision, and also are elected. So represent, the shareholders or their ratepayers, as this is. So I think understanding your role as a representative of the ratepayer is a really important. So if I'm elected for Cotham, I represent the Cotham constituents, so I should be listening to them and their concerns. Also, I should be thinking about the amount of money that certain things are costing. And I guess number one is that the council are responsible for employing the CEO. So there should be really very good due diligence around that to begin with, and that contract and how that's reviewed and the KPIs that are put into that contract and how that's measured. And then you'd think with something like with the Kew Rec, in my mind, I look at that and I think, in any commercial situation, someone would have. It doesn't matter. Okay, it does matter that the roof fell down, because we're very lucky that people didn't lose their lives, really, in many ways. So that does matter. But in the end, if this was a commercial situation, someone would have said, okay, all right, well, you've had a bit of this fault, and you've done this fault, and there's a bit here, and you'd negotiate an agreement where everyone would, I've worked in negotiation. You actually, commercially, you wouldn't be sitting there this much over budget and over time. So there's obviously a lack of project management skills, I would suggest, in council in saying that. And I would think there's a key area. If I was council, I'd go in and go, well, so we've got a number of projects here that have gone over budget. How did this happen? Why? And what are we going to do about it in the future? And before we start another project, like the Kew Library, for example, knocking down that, why don't we get this one right and sorted before we start on anything else, and let's look at what that plan looks like. I mean, often the thing for me is often people say, oh, councillors can't get involved in the operations. No, you can't. But if your constituents ask questions, you should be able to bring those into a council room and ask those questions. And I think that's one of the reasons that I
Hello, have we lost?
Sorry.
We lost you for a minute, Liz.
Wait,
sorry, did you just hear me then?
Yeah, you're fine now.
Sorry, yeah, my internet connection was unstable. That's very unusual. But yeah, maybe because I was raving on too long. It kind of probably mutes me by itself. So I mean, I think that was there any other else, Sue, that I didn't answer there? But I think
yeah, I think that's
Perhaps it's worth just mentioning that I understand there was, or there is, a councillor subcommittee overseeing the Q pool, which does include Councillor Sinfield.
yes, yeah. There are key, small project groups that look at various areas. But surely as other councillors, you go, well, what do you do? At this point in time, what are you doing about this? I do think that, again, when it comes to governance, in my mind, you can have subcommittees that are involved in a certain project or a certain thing, or I've been on subcommittees that say have looked at say financial risk, or because I'm a finance person, I'm often on the finance committee or subcommittee, but it doesn't mean that every councillor isn't responsible, or every director isn't responsible for finances. So everybody's, everyone's piled into this. All ratepayers' money have been spent on this project. So as councillors who represent other ratepayers, you'd want to be saying, well, this project's,
Yeah, exactly. We don't have any more.
You should be able to question other councillors, is my view on that.
We don't have any more questions from the constituents at the moment. So while they think, if they have any more questions, I have just one or two here, which I will put to you.
Yeah.
Do you have one particular thing that drives you nuts about our current council that you would like to fix?
Wow. I think from what I've heard from community is really true community consultation. I've heard excuse me, of far too many. I've heard from far too many residents, ratepayers, people from community groups who feel passionate about something, who've been shut out of a community meeting due to points of order or what they might be, so there must, I don't know, I'm not a councillor yet, so I don't know all the rules around council, but I know there are. But if someone, it's always the thing that, being on boards, someone might say, oh, well, I've got a question about this. Oh, well, that's operational, you can't ask that question. When someone sort of does that to me, I think, well, you've got something to hide. It doesn't mean but I do think that that's what I would change. One of the key things I would change really is that I just don't think. However, to me, what I'm seeing within the community of people is not being listened to, or feel like they're being listened to, or heard, or allowed to have true democratic voice within the council. That's what I'm hearing.
Okay.
So that's one thing that I would really work on.
Okay, terrific. I've got another question on a different tack. Is homelessness a problem in Boroondara? And if so, what can council do about it?
Oh, that's a good one. I think homelessness is a problem everywhere. And it doesn't it's not just, you know, one place or the other, or I think it impacts throughout the world, but also, yes, it is an issue in Boroondara. I think one of the key areas we've got at the moment that we should work on is, for example, the Vic Roads building. There is work to be done there, I believe, and I have spoken to a few people about that particular site and how that, you know, looking at affordable housing. Because I think the thing we have in Boroondara, we talk about affordable housing. I don't necessarily think that homelessness is just about being able to afford. There's other services like mental health services, drug and alcohol services, all those things, wraparound services that are required for someone generally who's homeless. But a key one area is some, you know, a place to stay. Yeah, so and I do think Vic Roads offers a very good opportunity to look at something like the Nightingale sorts of projects, those sorts of things in our council area.
Yeah. A related question here is there enough social housing in Boroondara? And
I think having a son with a disability, I probably would say there's some, not heaps. I think I think we could do better in that area. Is my view.
Yeah.
Could I jump in with one?
Yeah.
Have you got any thoughts about the Victorian government's proposed Junction Activity Centre?
Oof. Yeah, I think, and I've spoken to some people about this. I'm all for good planning and sort of I guess medium density housing in areas, which is, you know, good well built housing with access to. See, I live on Harp Road, so for me, this is a perfect spot for medium density housing. Not high rise, and I think you can do that well. Near transport, near shops. I think my concern is that the state government, there's not been very good negotiation with our council and the state government around this plan, and I think there's huge risk that it's just going to be more apartments that are not affordable anyway. So that's my concern around having that overlay in that area. But I think there is room to negotiate appropriate housing. I think we missed back years ago with the Camberwell railway station. There was an opportunity there to do some better housing, but, you know, Jeffrey Rush and a few people got out and went against the opportunity to improve housing in that area. So, yeah.
okay. Well, it's just the end of my questions.
I've got a couple more I can throw in there. We've got more time if people are interested in hanging around.
I thought I was going to get that off early.
Well, you know, you talked a bit about the importance of trees, Liz, but have you got any further comments about tree canopy and biodiversity in terms of the recently adopted strategies, the strategies recently adopted by the council?
Well, I guess I mean, I think some of the I think the council need to be pushed to deliver on these things. I think things like supporting people with footpaths, you know, on their nature strips. I mean, I think there's opportunity to support in-home gardens, like, you know, gardens in people's backyards. I mean, I think with you know, diverse plants and native plants. I think, you know, it's an interesting thing looking at, I mean, walking around our you know, I mean, I love an English garden, but is it the best thing for our environment? So I think, you know, obviously the gardeners with Cooruncoot Creek, the funding there should be more funding in areas where we can increase our biodiversity around our green spaces. So,
We've just had a comment in the chat from Anne.
Yep.
She says 30% is not enough. We need 50% canopy cover. Another consultation that went bad. So she's referring to the tree canopy strategy and the target there.
Yeah. And look, I think if this was, to me, if the obviously the Lighter Footprints group are the experts in this area. So if Lighter Footprints are saying we believe that there's a lot of, you know, this is our, you know, expertise, then why doesn't council listen to that? I mean, what are the other players? What are they wanting? Is it developers that are making us money? Is it, I mean, my question is what, you know, we've got to look at the economics as well as consider the green spaces and the biodiversity. But I mean, if this community is saying yes, this is what we need, then of course, I think that's why not. I mean, surely there's space. We've got the space to do that.
What do you think the 50% canopy cover?
Sorry?
What do you feel about the 50% canopy cover?
Oh, well, I
And
think if it's realistic, yeah, why not?
Could we change it to 50%?
Could we?
Yes.
Why not? I mean, could we? I mean, I guess there must be the ability to.
We could work towards it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking if it's like, I guess this is what I keep saying. I'm not a complete expert in this area, but I do know people who are, and I think that people who I don't think there's a group here that would go, oh, we want it now. You'd want to listen to how it can be done. So if you're saying that, how, when we need to do this, this, and this, how do we do it? Like, I think there is, if we want more, do we want more houses? Do we want more, you know, more social housing? How do we ensure when we do that we still consider what green spaces are required and and I know there's thinking around with that Vic Road space, and like if the Camberwell Junction space, what opportunities there with pop-up green spaces, all those things where you can ensure that it's not just cement buildings.
Just to clarify, the council had a canopy cover target of 30% in their climate action plan, which was approved 2 or 3 years ago. Recently, they've adopted a tree canopy strategy, which wound that target back to, I believe it's 27%. So they actually went backwards.
Well, that's not, no, you shouldn't be doing that, I wouldn't think. The original, I mean, I mean, I can't ask you questions and you can't answer me, but how involved were lighter footprints in development of the action plan? I know that some people a lot of people made submissions, but when they're developing a climate action plan, is this one of the key stakeholders they come and speak to?
For the climate action plan, Lighter Footprints was given the opportunity to make a presentation to the council's committee, which was made up of councillors and officers that was developing the plan. So yes, there was an opportunity there. There was much less consultation around the tree canopy strategy, however.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. You'd think that they're one in the same. I mean, they're not one in the same, but you know, they're all sort of, they form part of.
That's right.
Exactly. Like, and I think that sort of seems like it seems like they want to, yeah, for me, that's that consultation where they want to consult, but is it really, I mean, I really don't think that there's probably enough environmental staff within what I can see on the staffing. Because if you want to actually have true consultation and true action in this area, you need the staff on
Absolutely.
and responsibilities for those things.
Mhm.
And I don't think in that area there is enough.
Yeah. But a couple of other questions I could throw up on issues in the municipality. How would you, as a councillor, act to minimise the impact of the Northeast Link on Boroondara?
Oh, well, I do think that there's going to be some sort of sound barrier type scenarios, but I think good tree planting can help with that as well. Like, so the green space down there, I mean, that's a very important space. So, and some of that's obviously been taken, hasn't it? So it's around working through how you could extend the space somewhere else. I'm not sure how you could, but I think the noise is going to be a major issue. I mean, I know that, and I think working out how you minimise noise with trees and green spaces as opposed to just big cement barrier. You know, I'm hoping someone wouldn't do that, but yeah, that's I guess what I'm thinking. Obviously, the environmental impact of having cars come down that space is yeah, I don't know. I mean, they should have a train line down there would be my thinking, but I don't. I'm not. I don't know whether I could, impact on that way. But given we can't get a train out to the airport, but I think less roads, more trains would be always be my strategy.
Your heart's in the right place then.
Yeah. Oh, well, I've always, I'm a railway girl. That's where I come from. Fast trains. If we could get fast trains instead of trucks with goods on them throughout that, don't get me started about that. So that's sort of my roads issue. And I guess going back to what someone else said about the roads, the fact that we've got so much heavy traffic driving through so many areas when it could be in other ways if we had better transport.
True. Well, just keeping on with the transport theme, you did make some reference to bike paths in your introductory statement.
Yeah.
So is there anything in particular around active transport, so not just bikes, but also pedestrian traffic that you think is needed in Boroondara?
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. Just don't get me started on that. I mean, thinking I mean, the amount of people that got their children in cars to drop them to school astounds me. And I can't encourage people to walk to school, or kids to walk to school, or ride to school, to make it safe for kids to ride to school, to have bike paths along in areas where kids can ride to schools is really an important thing. I mean, I know Peter Campbell's very much written and that has been involved very, very much into the active transport, and I've spoken to him a bit about that, and I think it's so important, just not only for minimising emissions, but health and well-being, what I call dignified risk taking. I think kids aren't allowed to take any risks anymore. You know, take more cars off the road. It's just, I don't know. I mean, it just astounds me. I guess it's sort of one of those things that I find that yes, the better access to bike paths, and but I was speaking to a group, and I don't know how that were
it looks like we've lost Liz.
having with bikes and people walking and dogs and kids and is my internet gone unstable again?
Yeah, you're back
You're
again.
back.
Yeah, no. So I do think, I know, I mean, having walked a lot with my son who's in a wheelchair, who's not unpredictable, he can move, that sometimes bikes just fly by without any indication. So again, I don't know how you do that in certain areas, whether it's, I don't know, chicanes or whatever it is, to make bikes slow down in high risk areas. But I mean, like just accessible bike paths along roads. I think good bike access. The walking bus, I don't know who runs those things, but that's like used to be a good thing back in the day, where you'd get kids involved in walking to school. And I think just people taking the lead. I mean, I think the good thing is seeing, like, having more. I know where we live, there was always, like, because I live near the Harp Hotel on that corner, and that pedestrian crossing there was still a bit diabolical, but at least now they have the lollipop people, like crossing supervisors, which I think are really useful. So probably more of those would help in certain areas for parents probably to feel that their kids could get to school safely.
Oh, look, I've got one more question. So if anybody can think of something to put in the chat, go for it. But my final question is about Australia Day, which obviously has been a bit controversial. So do you think that council should be performing citizenship ceremonies on Australia Day?
Oh, I don't think Australia. I think we've heard from our Indigenous community that they're not necessarily happy with the date. I think we should respect that. I think we could have it some other date. If we talk about reconciliation and action in that area, I think that's one thing you can do to respect what our First Nations people are saying. So my answer probably is no. I don't think we should. I don't actually see the point of it if it upset, if it's something that is important to our First Nations people. I really feel strongly about that, I guess. It's
That's a good clear answer, Liz. Thanks.
Mm.
Well, I've run out of questions now, so and I think Miff has, and we're not seeing any more in the chat. So
They've all gone to sleep. They've got their camera.
that's right. Everybody switched off their camera. Um, everyone's drinking their glass of wine.
Oh, nice. Nice.
So look, Liz, the agenda gives you another couple of minutes to make a closing statement if you'd like to. So the floor is yours.
Oh, I feel like I've, as I said, my knowledge of the environment comes from the heart as opposed to the science. Although, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm denying this. I'm not saying, climate change. No, I absolutely understand, impact. It impacts us and will impact our future. I mean, it's very clear. It's one thing that I think it shouldn't be. It shouldn't play into party politics. It should be something that we understand and know from all sides of politics, and it should be a bipartisan issue, like many other issues are. Unfortunately, I think there's some, obviously big mining companies, etc., that sort of fund some people, and I think that's a great pity. So yeah, I think my thing is I'm willing to listen, and I'm not going to say I've got all the solutions, and I'm not going to be able, you're part of a bigger group, but I think if anything, what I like to do is hear and listen, and then share that with other people who may ideas. So if that makes sense, as a councillor, I'm going to be representing, if I was elected, I'm going to be representing the residents of Cotham, but also the residents of Boroondara. So I would like to think that if there's an issue around climate that impacts on, say, lighter footprints, but someone else is saying, no, we want it this way, then some way of working on how to negotiate a good outcome for everybody. And I think I have the ability to do that. I've done that in the past. I have done a lot of work on stakeholder consultation. I was very involved with the implementation of the NDIS, which has been a significant piece of national social policy, which I'm very proud of, but also isn't perfect. But it has changed the lives of many, and I've seen that come to fruition, which I think is fantastic. So exactly is how I'd like to think about environment. I think there's, if it impacts on economics and those things, I think it's something that you can build upon. So I went to a reconciliation action, the Boroondara Reconciliation Network, and Uncle Charles Pakana, who was talking about the economics of reconciliation, the economics of treaty. And it's really interesting when you're speaking with some people, you need to speak about the heart and the importance and nature and health and well-being. And with others, you talk about, well, it's, and this is going back to environment, you talk about it's good to have, renewable energy to fuel your house because it's going to make it cheaper for you. So yeah, that's me.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Liz. We really appreciate you putting yourself forward and submitting to all of our questions.
Oh, no. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the work that I know how much it actually takes to be an activist, and to be involved. I'm involved in many things. So I actually really thank you all very much for what you do, because I'm sure Boroondara wouldn't be as beautiful as it is now if it wasn't for some of the people here.
Thank you very much. Thanks everybody for coming along. I think that brings the session to an end. We're not all, as Lynn said, we're not all going back together into the big group again. So it's good night from the Lighter Footprints Candidates Forum. Thanks all for attending, and thanks especially to Liz.
Thank you so much, everyone.
And
It's
good luck in the election, Liz.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
fine.
Oh.